Hello, Sergey? It's me, Donnie. Donnie T. The Donster. Donnerino. Donneroo. Okay, yeah, the president. Right, him too. Yeah, the president. Okay, it's me. Want to come over to play? We could play your favorite game. I've got a secret you don't know. Oh, come on. No, I got lots of secrets. I can't tell you them. I don't want to tell you them over the phone. No, shouldn't do that. Someone could be listening. Okay, yeah. I'll give you... Remember that Israeli undercover intelligence agents we talked about the other day? Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. They got one in Syria, too. Yeah, really close to the president. Don't tell anybody. No, I can't tell you who. But it rhymes with toga binstructor. Yeah, okay, yeah. No, come on over. Nobody else will play with me. Come on over. No, Sergey, we're just bluffing. No, we're not going to do that. We're not. I know. We're supposed to tell you that so that you get afraid and then you worry that we're going to... Yeah, we're not going to do that. It's all a bluff. Don't worry. We wouldn't do that to you, Sergey. No, it's a bluff. Okay, yeah. Come on over. Okay, if you come over, you can have ice cream too. 1 scoop for you, 2 scoops for me. Okay, but you can have some ice cream too. Okay, good. Before you come, listen, you want to hear something funny? Something I know that you don't know? The nuclear launch codes. Okay, the nuclear launch code. Listen to this. My name, Donald J. Trump. My favorite color, orange. And my birthday. What are the odds? What are the odds? It is unbelievable. It's like I was born to be the president. Okay, yeah. So come on over. Okay, yeah. Okay, listen. I gotta go eat some ice cream now. Okay, bye.
It's time for Forward Nation Radio. Now here he is, the host of Forward Nation Radio, David Leventhal.
Welcome to Forward Nation Radio with me, David Leventhal. On today's show, well, the news, listener questions, that's really going to rock your boat, and a discussion of diversity on college campuses. But first, a quick goodbye. Julia, thank you for the chocolate cake crumbs that you left in the cafeteria. But you're fired. Not for eating the chocolate cake. Now, it has nothing to do with the chocolate cake. And thank you for your astute criticisms of the way we're doing the show. But you're not fired for that either. Maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you're fired for that. I think primarily you're fired for going to a more civilized nation over the summer to advance your education. So I think you're fired because you quit. Or the cake, one or the other. Either way, you're fired. Good luck to you. Okay, in the news. Attorney General Jeff Sessions orders federal prosecutors to go after the maximum prison sentences for drug dealers and drug users. Don't worry, we're going to get to the real news in a little bit. The news you're waiting for. Anyway, Sessions orders this. The first thing quickly about the order of prosecutors to charge the maximum sentence is, does this guy have any idea how prosecutors work in America? They already charge the maximum sentence. That way they force the criminal defendants to plead to a lesser crime for fear of getting the book thrown at them for whatever it is they did or did not do. There's no better way to get innocent people to plead guilty to a crime than to threaten them with such draconian punishment that they have no choice but to accept what plea bargain you're willing to give them. That aside, it's interesting that the administration is coming out being harder on drug users at a time when there is unanimity, basically, in our country about the need to be less harsh in our prison sentences for drug users and drug dealers. This is an area of agreement between liberals and conservatives. Yes, that's right. When I say an area of agreement, I think I probably mean the area of agreement. Probably one thing that liberals and conservatives have been agreeing on in the last year. Something that the Koch brothers can agree with David Leventhal on. That we need to show more leniency in prison sentences. We need to stop the war on drugs. We need to look for other solutions to people who are suffering from drugs. So why is it that the administration would be going in the wrong direction? Well, the easy answer, of course, is that they're stupid. And clearly, when it comes to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, that's obviously the case. This is a man who was radioactive and had no friends when he was in the Senate, but is the Attorney General of the United States, of course, simply because he was the first jackass to jump on the Trump ship. So he gets to be Attorney General and play shortstop. The other reason, of course, that this is always a good thing is this is a great way to appeal to the Republican base. It's always good to say we're going to lock them all up, and by them, of course, the understanding is we're primarily going to be doing this to black people and other people of color. And so at a time when Trump is floundering, this is a great way to reach out to his base and say, we're still with you. We're going to lock up all the bad guys. Can't discuss the news without discussing the ransomware issue that had been all over the papers for a few days before it was supplanted by something even much more urgent. But ransomware, what do we learn? Well, even something like the internet is going to manage to be corrupted in a way where even something positive, you say, we just can't make anything work right. All this hacking, releases of information, in this case ransoming, are going to have the effect of chasing people away from the internet to some extent. How bad does this get? I don't know, stay tuned, but it just shows that we can basically ruin everything. And of course, the latest to come out of the ransomware scandal is the findings from U.S. government officials that North Korea appears to be behind the attack. Fortunately, Donald Trump does not listen to Forward Nation Radio, because I assume that the administration is working very hard to make sure that Donald Trump never finds out that North Korea might have been behind this, because God knows what that idiot might do at 3 a.m. Okay, in other news, before we get to the big Russia story, the United States Supreme Court refused to hear an appeal to the federal court decision in North Carolina on the North Carolina voter ID rules. This is hailed as a victory because the appeals court had ruled that the North Carolina law, which was clearly designed to prevent black people from voting, was unconstitutional. The fact that the United States Supreme Court, with 5 conservative Supreme Court justices, decided not to take the case is a good sign, especially since this is basically the same court that eviscerated the Voting Rights Act a few years ago and led to the North Carolina law that's now been overturned by the appeals court and whose decision remains the law of the land, certainly the law of North Carolina. It's interesting, in that case, the appeals court had ruled that this was a law that targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. If that's not a quote, it's awfully close to one. Targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. In other words, the court found that the typical Republican bullshit about this being about ensuring voting rights and voting fairness and preventing voter fraud was a bunch of crap. This was, no surprise to anybody who's paying any attention, an effort to make sure that black people don't vote. Why? Black people tend to vote for Democrats. Where is the principle in here? There is none, of course, other than I want to win, which is the way the Republican Party basically conducts itself these days. The response to the Supreme Court decision not to hear an appeal of that ruling was met with the 2 leaders of the North Carolina state legislature saying, don't worry, people, we will continue to go out there fighting the common sense good fight to protect the sanctity of our voting places. This is a comment aimed at 2 people. First of all, 2 groups of people. First of all are the racists. The racists follow dog whistle politics, which is you make coded statements about appealing to their racism. They know what you're talking about, but then you get to turn around to more moderate people and say, that's not what I meant. Oh, no, I didn't mean black people. So it's clear that people hear, okay, we're going to keep stopping African Americans from voting. But then the perhaps less bigoted North Carolina Republican, or anybody else out there who might want to listen, gets to hear we're going to improve voting rights and make sure that voting is fair and there's no voting fraud. And who can argue with any of that? And they get to say this isn't about black people at all, despite the fact that the court found precisely that. Okay, moving on to the big story of the day. The firing of FBI Chief James Comey and the information that's come up recently on that. What's interesting about this story, first, of course, is to watch the administration and Republicans in Congress fall all over themselves, trying to lie their way out of this, and then ultimately getting caught in their own lies. There's nothing been quite so fun as the spectacle of a Republican leader coming out and saying, this had nothing to do with the Russia investigation. 2 hours after Donald Trump had tweeted, oh yeah, this has to do with the Russian investigation. They don't even know what the hell each one of them are doing. The lies are coming so thick and heavy that they can't keep up. We talked about loyalty on this show a couple weeks ago, the concept of loyalty. It is pretty clear to everybody that loyalty, and someone who works for the United States government, loyalty is to the United States government, the United States people, the United States Constitution. If you are sworn into your position, you are sworn to abide by the U.S. Constitution. We talked about the fact that that's not the way loyalty works within the Republican Party. In the Republican Party, loyalty is to your party, not to your country. We had talked about that, and then a couple of days later, it came out that Donald Trump had sat down with FBI Director James Comey while he was still the FBI director and demanded loyalty, not to the country. Comey apparently was quick to offer that loyalty, but that was not good enough. The loyalty was to the president and to the Republican Party, and apparently Comey was not willing to give him that kind of loyalty. And that precipitated the firing. What else precipitated the firing? Well, that stuff that we just talked about happened about 4 days ago, so that makes it old news. Now, of course, the new news is the memo. The Comey memo that was written apparently contemporaneously with a meeting that he had with Donald Trump, where Trump, after ordering some of his staff out of the room, said to Comey that he wanted him to end the Russia investigation. The investigation of Mike Flynn, which of course is what's leading upward and upward and upward. Comey, following a well-known principle in corporate America known as CYA, or cover your ass, wrote a memo detailing what the conversation was, to the extent that he had to act in ways that he thought inappropriate. He would have this memo to bring out as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, apparently the memo is out. And Comey pointed out, now, is this obstruction of justice? People are still trying to figure out what Trump's intent was, what he knew at the time. But Times, I think, reported that law professor Noah Feldman at Harvard has pointed out that this is exactly the kind of thing that the founders had in mind when they talked about impeachment being about a high crime and misdemeanor. So what are people saying about the Comey firing? Well, in the Times today, there was an op-ed that said, get out now. Everyone in the Trump administration, get out now before you are so tainted and so tarnished that you will only be able to have a future on Fox News or for some Republican propaganda machine or some big Republican business, which actually keeps a whole lot of opportunities open. He said, get out now. The administration is getting so tainted. The cabinet is so tainted that your best way to save yourself is to get out now. Israeli intelligence, it's being reported, Also, an Israeli newspaper ran the report that Israeli intelligence is saying to their agents, do not share anything with America and do not share anything with the President of the United States. He cannot be trusted to keep his mouth shut. Okay. Which, of course, builds on the idea that Donald Trump was also having conversations with Russia, as you might have seen before this show. We did a little bit on that. That Donald Trump has been disclosing classified information to Russia. Not necessarily. Well, when Donald Trump discloses it, he's happy to tell us. It's no longer classified because the president disclosed it. But of course, if this were Hillary Clinton, the lynch party would be out there already. Anyway, so Israeli intelligence is saying, don't talk to the president, he can't be trusted. U.S. intelligence is saying, don't talk to the president. Let's try to keep things from the president, like presumably that North Korea was behind the recent ransomware attack. Keep it from the president because we don't trust him and we don't know what he's going to do. When he goes to speak to a foreign leader, we don't know what he's going to blab about. Richard Burr, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the guy who's supposed to be better than at least the last guy we had at the House, came out and said if the New York Times has a memo like this from James Comey, they should be investigating and making it public, leading many to ask, what do you think your job is? You're the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's your job to find out this information about what Trump's been blabbing and what Trump's been ordering as far as closing down the investigation of his Russia ties. This is supposedly one of the better investigators, but most of the Republicans, not all, are continuing to circle the wagons, saying, we stand behind the president. Whatever he does, everything's fine. And what are Trump supporters saying as we find out that he's trying to close off investigations while leaking classified information? I had the great pleasure yesterday while driving home listening to NPR and hearing on the show I was listening to them interview a couple of Trump supporters. I've talked about Trump supporters in the past. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this. It's just remarkable how brain dead a human being can be. Jane Marr, one of the leaders of his campaign committee in Boulder, Colorado, apparently, you are so brain dead stupid that it's hard to imagine that you have any friends right now. People with any brains at all listen to you open your mouth and think, how did someone so stupid get into this room? The gay Latin American Republican who followed, who's desperately trying to believe that Donald Trump, in his heart of hearts, has nothing against gay people or Latinos. What is wrong with you? We'll talk about the fantasy world they live in and how they continue to believe that in a moment, but let's get to listener questions first. Very briefly, Mark from Brooklyn. Is there a possibility that, hopefully, Trump can be taken out of office? Mark, remarkably, it's starting to appear like there's no way this guy's going to be able to survive his administration for 4 years. It's hard to imagine. We're not even 4 months in, and we've gotten to this point where everything has imploded. He's leaking state secrets. He's closing off investigations. He's lying all the time. He has no idea what's happening in his government. So, while I've been downplaying the possibility for a long time, it's starting to look like this guy needs to be taken out of office. If you're a regular listener, Mark, you know that in one of our first shows, we talked about the fact that we shouldn't probably be talking about impeachment of Donald Trump, although now we should be talking about impeachment. We should be talking about Article 25 of the United States Constitution, which says that a president could be removed for disability. I guess that's a 25th Amendment. That a president can be removed for disability. We had talked about this on the show, that this needs to be invoked. He is incapable of carrying out the duties of his office. Interestingly, in the New York Times today, conservative Republican op-ed writer Ross Douthat wrote the same thing. It's time to get this guy out of office for disability. The fact that he is incapable of discharging his duties as President of the United States. On the other hand, I had a discussion this morning with someone who said, do you really want Trump taken out that quickly? As awful and as crazy as he is, the next guy is also a jackass. And it's possible if Trump gets out, they'll have a more possibility of pursuing their agenda and getting it through. At this point, you hope that Trump is so weakened, the party so divided, the investigations so strong, that it's pretty hard for them to do anything. That being said, the man doesn't deserve to be in office, and let come whatever may come. And yeah, apparently now there is a possibility. Marissa from Mastic, New York asks, do you think communism could ever work? No. Thanks for your question. A little bit more. I'm not a communist. I don't think communism works. I think that we learn, people are just too selfish for communism to work. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the fact that people have incentives to work a little bit harder, take risks, etc., is a good thing. The problem is communism doesn't work, but also we've learned that capitalism doesn't work either. In fact, we learned that, discussed at a much earlier show. We learned that long before we learned that communism doesn't work. We learned that capitalism doesn't work. What's the answer? Well, I consider myself a socialist, or as Bernie Sanders would say, a democratic socialist. I believe in a strong role for government moderating the free market system, and I believe a basic safety net for all Americans is warranted. But I don't believe that we should all have the same, and I believe in a free enterprise system that's moderated by a government that requires that it works for the benefit of all Americans. I don't think it could ever work, but we could move in that direction and end up more socialistic, where at least we allow a safety net, ensure a safety net for all Americans, education, healthcare, nutrition. Thanks, Marissa, for your question, as well as Mark. We look forward to more of your questions next week. Okay. Last week, there was an article from one of my colleagues in the school newspaper decrying the lack of diversity on college campuses, particularly the one I teach at. We reach out for diversity on race, ethnicity, religion, but not for, and I think you know where I'm going with this, but not for conservatives. Conservatives don't get to express their opinion on college campuses. So I've been asked about this a couple of times in class, and I think it relates to a lot of things that we talk about in the media, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about this issue. First of all, I'm asked, what do I think of this op-ed? I think this op-ed's kind of pathetic and a little bit childish. First of all, let's talk about equating affirmative action for black people and Hispanics, Latinos, with basically affirmative action for wealthy white people who don't give a shit about anybody else. I don't think it's the same. Some people go through life suffering from racism, suffering the effects of racism, sexism. Some people go through life suffering the effects of having a lot of money and people being envious of them. I don't put them in the same category. But mostly, what do I think about this article? The same thing I thought about it 30 years ago when I first heard that argument being made. This is propaganda. This is bullshit. This is said all the time. Why do we talk about lack of diversity and liberal professors on college campuses? By the way, I want to point out that this was written by a very conservative professor who works for another very conservative department head. So where he's even coming up with his facts, I don't know. But it doesn't matter because they came from Fox News and he pulled them out of his ass. Okay? Why do we have this theme that colleges are liberal propaganda by liberal professors? We talked in an earlier episode about how there were posters up last semester on my campus about tired of liberal college professors, join an organization that's funded by the Koch brothers. That makes a lot of sense. It's part of a big theme, and the theme is, if you're selling snake oil, if you are selling alternative facts, false information, you have to discredit every honest source of information. Propaganda works when it is not countered by ideas that are fact-based and thoughtful. We have done that with the conservatives have mounted an attack on every avenue of information in this country that might allow people to actually get informed rather than misinformed. Any alternative to Fox News and its ilk is going to be attacked. We talked in our live show about how the media has been compromised. Corporate control, corporate ads, corporations letting it be known that they're going to pull their ads if the content doesn't fit their preconceptions, doesn't fit their desire to make more money. But media is also filled, to the extent that news and facts might come out, our news is filled with fake information. Retired military commanders who get paid by private military contractors to go on TV and act as experts. Global warming scientists who are neither scientists nor disclosing the fact that they are paid millions of dollars by the fossil fuel industry to go on TV and lie about global warming. It doesn't exist. Buying of education and the results of studies that will be reported in educational institutions where companies pay for research with the understanding that if the research does not suit the company's agenda, the researchers cannot release the information. Media consolidation. We just saw the news of Sinclair, a right-wing media organization who apparently in the past have said that Fox News is too liberal for them. Has been approved to buy Tribune Media Services. News has been reported that Sinclair news stations, local news stations around the country, have been filled with must-runs from the parent organization. Prepackaged news items. And news in air quotes. Prepackaged propaganda items masquerading as news that they're supposed to run on the news. This happens from presidential administrations, where the PR arm of presidential administrations prepares fake news reports and then news stations run it. In other words, the media has been corrupted to an extent that you can't trust what you hear. True facts will not come out to counter alternative facts. Well, we get our news from the internet. It was a way to democratize information, get around the corporate control. Well, what's happened with that? They've so filled the internet with bullshit. Social media organizations and news sources from the internet is filled with such bullshit that you can't trust what you hear from the internet. If you want to believe something from the internet, look something up, you got to go to one of the regular media sources, hoping that at least it has enough integrity to not outright lie to you. Recent rulings about net neutrality from the FCC to get rid of net neutrality is all about corrupting the internet so that honest news could be slowed down so that people decide they're going to listen to Fox News or watch Fox News on the internet rather than The Nation magazine or Forward Nation radio. So we'll corrupt the internet. We have the legal system and courts as a way to find the truth, fact find, investigate. Well, we've seen Trump and Republican respect for investigations. Investigations of Russia ties and leak of confidential information. We're going to stop those investigations. We have confidentiality agreements throughout our legal system to make sure that people in our legal system cannot disclose whatever information is uncovered during their case. Confidentiality agreements specifically to prevent the spread of actual information so that the companies can continue to spread false information. That car is perfectly safe. No one's ever gotten injured driving this car because you don't know about the 100 lawsuits that they've settled with confidentiality agreements. Arbitration clauses we've talked about in the past to keep people out of court. You can't find anything out. The fact finding will be limited. The information coming out of arbitration proceedings will be much more limited if it comes out at all than it will be from court. And finally, where else can people get true facts? Where else can we avoid right-wing propaganda lying to us? Fake information, false facts, education. That's right. Colleges, schools. Well, in public schools, we've already taken civics out. We've already taken any discussion of newspaper current events out so that people won't get informed. But now in colleges, people may go to college and listen to a college professor who actually knows something. Talk about it. And that interferes with your ability to have a strong opinion about it because you're a moron and you don't know anything, because you pulled it out of your ass. We are corrupting education and we are silencing liberal voices. How do we corrupt education? There are no conservatives in education? Maybe that's because right now, the state of conservatism today, as discredited as it is, as disgraceful as it is, as lacking any intellectual integrity, maybe that shouldn't be in our institutions of higher learning. Maybe false facts, alternative facts, if you will, are not what should be peddled on college campuses. Maybe that's why there seems like some lack of conservatism. Maybe if places where people are informed and thoughtful don't contain a lot of conservatives, you could believe that it's part of a liberal plot, which I've never seen exist. But maybe it's a less charitable explanation. It's because in places where people are informed and thoughtful, conservative bullshit doesn't play well. There's a reason Sean Hannity doesn't join academic conferences. Because he's a fucking joke. No conservatives on college campuses? Tell that to business and economics programs that survive because of corporate donations. At least we liberal professors honestly believe what we're peddling. Okay, that's it for today's show. As always, thank you for joining us. If you like the show, please join us at forwardnationradio.com. Join us at our Facebook page, our Instagram page. Listen to us on Podbeam. Please like us, share us with your friends, spread the word. Thanks for listening. Come back to us with listener questions. Forward Nation Radio, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Forward Nation Radio with David Leventhal.